Hey, you guys, I hope you all are doing well. We're welcoming back. He is a nutritionist, he is plant based coach, Ramsey. And I call him super fit on this video because he is super fit and he show you guys how to do it. He coach and he also do consultations. So you guys check him out in the link below. Check him out on Instagram, Facebook, where TikTok. He's everywhere. So check him out. He's teaching. He do live on YouTube videos as well. So you guys check him out. Thank you, thank you, thank you for coming back again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So I wanted to start out with this. What's the difference between omega 6, 3, and 9? I know people talk about them, but some people don't even know what is it and how important it is.
Yeah, so basically the fatty acids is a molecular structure between them, and you typically need like a balance among them. So it's not like, you need one as opposed to the other, or one is good and the other is bad or anything like that. So one thing that people tend to do is they'll say, oh, omega 6s are inflammatory. And that's why you should get foods that have more omega 3s. It's actually not true. Omega 6 and omega 3 are anti inflammatory. And they perform a variety of functions, maintaining brain matter, growing hair, skin, and nails, generating new cells, neurotransmitters, enzymes, these types of things. So there's a lot of metabolic processes and hormonal processes and things like that that the essential fatty acids play a role in. And as you eat a variety of different types of foods that have dietary fat, you will get these essential fatty acids. And so, really, you need mainly your omega 3 and omega 6, right? And you need both. Now, as far as my top sources of essential fatty acids, they're primarily going to be nuts and seeds, and foods like avocado, for example. Right. So, things like as far as omega 3 essential fatty acids, you'll get that from leafy greens, you'll get it from some fruits, and you'll even get it from some whole grains, right? Whether it be quinoa or kamut, or rolled oats and things like that. I mean, it's going to be in small amounts, but you don't really necessarily need essential fatty acids in large amounts. But let's say if you wanted to have more omega 3 essential fatty acids in your diet, it would be a good idea to have, let's say, um, more hemp seeds, flax seeds, chia seeds, avocado, things of this nature, as well as, let's say, spinach, kale, broccoli, leafy greens like that, watercress, and so on. And so you accumulate them over time, right?
Okay.
So, diversifying across these food groups is how you ultimately accumulate the essential fatty acids that you need.
So thank you. So what? Okay, we got the fats, um, and for some, let's say someone have cholesterol. Would eating these fats would it cause them to have higher cholesterol? Eating the avocado and these different nuts and seeds.
Yeah, so dietary cholesterol doesn't really directly raise or lower cholesterol.
Okay.
Your current cholesterol level, your body creates it on its own.
Mm-hmm.
So when you consume dietary fat, your body will use those lipids in part to create cholesterol, but it doesn't all get used to create cholesterol, right?
Mm-hmm.
At least not all of it. There's a portion of it, but not necessarily to an ultra significant degree, whereas it would justify reducing the dietary fat intake. The the dietary fat that's the most problematic is saturated fat. But saturated fat in very small doses is not really going to have any kind of negative impact. But in higher dosages, it's a problem, which is the reason why animal products, whether it be eggs, dairy, fish, chicken, things like this, or any kind of meat in general, are problematic because of the high levels of saturated fat and a disproportionate manner from polyunsaturated fat. So, if you're getting your dietary fat from whole food, plant based sources, that's not really going to raise your cholesterol. It might raise your HDL cholesterol, but as your HDL cholesterol increases, your LDL cholesterol would tend to decrease.
Mm.
Right. So some people, they have really high LDL, and when people have really high LDL, they tend to have low HDL. So there's a massive imbalance there, and that imbalance indicates chronic oxidative stress. So when you're under high levels of oxidative stress, that can cause a decrease in HDL and an increase in LDL. Excessively high LDL is usually a sign of chronic inflammation.
Mhm.
So when you consume a diet that drives down oxidative stress, that would cause inflammation to decline, and therefore LDL would also follow and HDL would increase. So you balance out your cholesterol production. That's ultimately what matters in terms of diet.
Okay. Now, I didn't even intend to ask that question, but um, I've heard that cholesterol, high cholesterol, is linked to, because I want to talk about the brain here, is linked to dementia and Alzheimer's. Did you know anything about that?
Linked, sure. Causal, no.
Okay.
So if you have a neurodegenerative disorder, chances are there's going to be a lot of inflammation as a result.
Hmm.
Neurodegenerative disorders tend to stem from insulin resistance and excessively high blood sugar and blood pressure. This would drive up oxidative stress. And one of the ways that oxidative stress is represented in the form of inflammation is excessively high LDL. So that excessively high LDL is not necessarily a cause, but an indicator, right? Similar to how high blood pressure or hypertension is not a cause of disease; it's an indicator.
Okay. So keeping the pressure regular is important when it comes to brain health as well.
Yeah. Now, your diet and your lifestyle should regulate your blood pressure,
Hmm.
right? Because high blood pressure is a sign of inflammation. It's an indicator,
Okay. I
right? So when
forgot.
you drive down the oxidative stress, your blood
Mhm.
pressure will improve as a result.
Okay. I heard what is this doctor's name? He was talking, I guess he was against taking supplements of the omega 3, 6, and 9. But now he's taking it because he noticed that he's like at risk with having dementia or mental or memory loss. So and
Mhm.
he's vegan. He said he's vegan, plant based. So that's why this
Oh,
topic
okay,
came.
gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I haven't really seen necessarily. I mean, you can supplement with it, but if you have a balanced enough diet, because you don't need a lot of it, that's the thing, right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, you could take an omega, an omega 3 complex supplement. I suppose you could.
Hmm.
Some people supplement with DHA. So, for example, you have EPA and then you have DHA. um, which is made inside, EPA is made inside plants, DHA is typically made inside animals.
Hmm.
And EPA, a portion of your EPA is converted into DHA. So EPA typically comes from plant based foods.
Hmm.
So the essential fatty acids are synthesized inside whatever you're eating. And so then that's how you get the EPA creation inside the plant foods that you're eating. And then when you consume these things, a portion of that EPA will get converted into DHA.
Mhm.
This tends to happen in small amounts. And the primary reason for that is because most of your brain is already developed.
Mhm.
So you don't really necessarily need to create more brain tissue or brain mass because your brain is already fully formed.
Mhm.
Now, if you go through a lot of damage to your brain, then it would probably make sense that you would need more of these essential fatty acids, I suppose, right?
Mhm.
Um, I haven't really particularly seen a case for that, but I suppose it would be possible. But ordinarily, your average person, they're not having cognitive issues or neurodegenerative issues because they're not getting enough omega 3 or they're not getting enough omega 6 or anything. That's not really what the case is. The things that will determine your mental health the most are going to be are going to be your electrolyte balance, the pH balance as far as alkaline and acid balance in your body, particularly in your bloodstream and on a cellular level, is
Mhm.
going to be the utilization of glucose and glycogen storage, right? So if you are insulin resistant, your body is very inefficient with utilizing glucose or stored glycogen for energy. That
Mhm.
can cause negative effects. Sleep deprivation, right?
Mhm.
Sleep deprivation tends to hurt people cognitively. It's not really an essential fatty acid thing, it's a sleep quality thing.
Mhm.
Um, Low gut serotonin because of having gut health issues or digestive issues of some sort, where they're just having low levels of serotonin because their, let's say, magnesium, potassium, and tryptophan levels are not adequate as far as nutrition is concerned. So there's a lot of things like that. It's not really just an essential fatty acid thing.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. So now I heard you say the blood can be acidy. Like, how could a person alkaline their blood? Like, what are some ways? See, I'm these questions coming, that,
Yeah.
but it's connected to the topic as well.
Yeah. So, and this is, we have to have like a bit more of a nuanced conversation about these things, right? So, um, so I did a stream this Monday on, acid versus acidic versus the alkaline diet, right?
Mhm.
And my first opening line was Dr. Sabi was right, right?
Mhm.
Because the rationale, the reasoning is sound. Now, the reason why your blood would be acidic is because you have a metabolic disorder where um, you have an energy cycle,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So, for example, your body will absorb oxygen and use glucose and take that glucose to create energy inside the cell in the form of ATP. Your cells will use that ATP. That ATP will convert into ADP, right? So go from being adenosine triphosphate to being adenosine diphosphate. And your body will then reconvert the ADP back into ATP. And there's a cycle that happens there.
Mhm.
So you have negatively charged ions and positively charged ions, right? So, for example, when you're breathing in fresh oxygen, that's negatively charged ions, which is required for electric energy to be conducted through your body. And then
Mhm.
you have positively charged ions that are a byproduct of energy expenditure, right? It's like oxygen in, carbon dioxide out,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
so basically, if you, let's say, let's say you breathe into a bag, and the more you breathe into a bag, the more carbon dioxide you accumulate in that bag. And then essentially what happens is that bag runs out of oxygen. So you can be breathing in the bag and still feel like you're suffocating, even though you're breathing into the bag, right?
Mhm.
Because there's not fresh air in the bag anymore. So technically there's air in the bag, but just not oxygen. And so you can actually suffocate to death breathing in and out of the bag, right?
Mhm.
And the suffocation is really just acid buildup, right?
Mhm.
Fresh oxygen in and of itself can help to alkalize your body, right? This is why deep breathing exercises are so beneficial to human health.
Mhm.
So one of the simplest ways to immediately alkalize your body is deep breathing exercises. Another one is being more hydrated. So, for example, drinking fresh water, right? Because one of the primary ways that your body shuttles fresh oxygen into your cells is through hydration, through
Mm-hmm.
water, right?
Yes.
So, you want to oxygenate your body, you need to be hydrated in order to do so,
Mm-hmm.
right? And then when we get into things like nutrition, for example, well, nutrition provides alkalizing minerals. So let's say if you're getting a lack of magnesium in your diet, you're getting a lack of potassium in your diet, you're getting a lack of manganese in your diet. These are very important alkalizing minerals. And if you have a mineral or electrolyte deficiency in your diet, this can result in excess acid formation in your body because
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the necessary mineral structures to be able to produce more alkaline forming elements inside your body. So when we look at things like fatty liver disease, chronic kidney disease, diabetes, and even obesity, all of these things are a result of having too much acid buildup in your body,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
So an example of this would be, let's say your blood sugar is real high. Well, your blood sugar is real high because the blood sugar is not being filtered into your cells and stored as glycogen inside your cells to be used for energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is this causes an inflammatory response where you will have vascular constriction, which will raise your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
That high blood pressure in and of itself is stress on the body, which can cause cellular damage, including the damage to the endothelial layers inside your vascular system, right? Your arteries and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
So then you can actually have vascular damage as a result of that excessive high blood pressure from the blood sugar. Now, if the glucose isn't being efficiently shuttled into your cells and your cells have a shortage of stored glycogen to be able to be used to produce ATP.
Mm-hmm.
So that ATP ADP cycle that I was explaining earlier,
Mm-hmm.
that process, there's a hitch in that process. So now your cells end up being short on the necessary energy that they need. So that process, that metabolic process stalls out. And if that process stalls out, those cells start to die off.
Mm-hmm.
What this would feel like is like neuropathy, that numbness and tingling and whatnot.
Yes.
That's what it feels like to have cellular death. That's what that is, right? Your cells are being damaged and destroyed, they're being oxidized, and it's producing pain, which is another inflammatory response. It indicates to you, hey, you're experiencing some real damage and cellular death going on here because there's a hitch in that metabolic process,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
That's all related to excess acid disproportionate to alkaline formation, right? So that's just an example of how that is. Now, if you're dealing with this over a prolonged period of time, this eventually ends up being chronic kidney disease. Your kidneys play a very large role in alkalizing your body.
Mm-hmm.
Your kidneys play a very large role, number one, in excreting excess acid from your body, and number two, recycling acid into alkaline forming substances. So
Okay.
your kidneys do these two things primarily through a series of ways of manipulating, hormonal pathways and things like that to produce these results.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you get creatine formation in your cells. Creatine gets expended, gets converted into creatinine. Creatinine gets filtered through your kidneys. Your body then synthesizes new creatine to then store back into your cells, rinse and repeat.
Okay.
Right. So it's this kind of thing. Um, so this plays more of a role than something like essential fatty acids necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have an over accumulation of acid formation in your body and then you're consuming more dietary fats trying to get more essential fatty acids or whatever the case is, you can actually make the problem worse,
Wow.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because your problem is what you're doing is you're introducing more of these fatty acids in your body, and fatty acids necessarily need to be converted into something else,
Okay.
right? Because the breakdown of fats into fatty acids is a acid formation production,
Mm-hmm.
right? So basically, it's kind of like protein will break down into fatty acids. Protein will break down into amino acids. Those amino acids can't just perpetually float around in your bloodstream and get stored inside or get stored somewhere. they need to be converted into something else, right? So the
Mhm.
conversion is from the acids into an alkaline forming substance, right? Or some type of cells. So the amino acids necessarily need to be converted into various other proteins. They can't just stay as amino acids. Your body doesn't even store amino acids. If it did, this would be an excessive form of acid accumulation in your body. That's why it has to be necessarily converted. Same thing with fatty acids. You can't just have high, as a matter of fact, having high levels of fatty acids in your blood is a problem, actually.
Wow.
Right? In the same way, high levels of protein in your blood is a real problem. Or
Mhm.
even having high levels of protein in your urine is a problem. The
Mhm.
reason why it's a problem is because it's an indication of high levels of acid formation,
Mhm.
which means that there's a hitch in the metabolic system that produces alkaline formation. So it all goes back to that whole metabolic system.
Mhm.
And that problem has to be fixed first. It's the reason why one of the best things that you can do if you have some type of real big metabolic disorder is reduce the amount of protein you consume. Right. So you have something like the 80-10-10 diet, 80% carbs, 10% protein, 10% fat.
Mhm.
And that's because the carbohydrates are more alkaline forming substances, particularly when it comes from whole foods. These are alkalizing foods usually, right? It's
Mhm.
not really necessarily high fat alkalizing foods,
Mhm.
right? There's a few, but there's not many. But,
Mhm.
leafy greens, mostly carbohydrates, high in minerals, alkalizing. Fruits, same thing.
Mhm.
Things like kamut, quinoa, same thing, right?
Mhm.
Fermented cocoa like cacao, same thing, alkalizing,
Mhm.
right? Hemp seeds, high in omega-3s, high in magnesium, manganese, potassium, essentially all of your alkalizing minerals, right?
Mhm.
Alkalizing.
Mhm.
So when you have these things as the basis of your diet, that's when you can really start to recover and even out your metabolic health, right? This is the reason why Dr. Sabi's methodology or the 80-10-10 or raw vegan diet, all of these things are alkalizing. And the
Mhm.
thing that they all have in common is they're lower in protein, lower in fat, and high in carbs. They all have this same through line.
Yes.
And they're all been clinically proven to reverse metabolic disorders and chronic illness, cancer, and all types of stuff.
Mhm. Yes. Thanks for sharing that. Can you see the questions?
Yes.
Okay, we have a
So
question here.
yeah, so can we reverse neuropathy? I had shocks and pains in my feet last year, but it went away after I cut back overeating, but I'm still considered obese. So I guess you started eating less. Yeah. So if you're eating less, then your body the metabolic demand of digestion is less, right? So eating foods and metabolizing foods will necessarily create acid formation. So depending on what you eat would dictate how much acid formation you actually have as a result. So it depends on how, what you ate less. So for example, fasting is really beneficial to improving your metabolic health because um you're reducing the foods that are driving acid formation,
Mhm.
right? So your foods can actually be thrown off the balance as a result if you're eating acidic foods.
Yeah.
So if you're fasting, well, you're literally not eating acidic food. So now you have more of a shot at alkalizing your body, especially when you're doing things like drinking herbal teas, which are alkalizing, or drinking, let's say, water with electrolytes in it, which is also alkalizing,
Mhm.
or just drinking water, right, which is also alkalizing. Deep breathing exercises, which is also alkalizing. And so when you're doing these things during a fast, you will drop body fat, you will improve insulin sensitivity, you will improve your kidney function, your liver function, your mental health, your sleep quality, all of these kind of things, right?
Mhm.
Because you're not throwing that monkey wrench into your metabolism by consuming these high level acid formation foods, right?
Mhm.
So that could be the issue there. Now, can neuropathy be reversed? Yes, it can, because neuropathy is not neuropathy is not a disease necessarily. It's an indication of disease,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's a symptom. You feel the neuropathy because of something that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you address and fix the thing that's happening, you will no longer feel the pain and the neuropathy as a result of that thing happening. Right. So I've had plenty of people who came to me with neuropathy. Um, you know, I've had it in certain instances. It was acute. It wasn't like in my feet or anything like that, but it would be like in other areas, like my neck or my in between my shoulder blades or in my hand, in my left hand or something like that. And then slightly in my left foot, these types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I knew what to do for it in order to reduce that oxidative stress. So, I mean, if you know what to do and you understand the methodology that I've been talking about here so far, then you get more of a sense of how to fix it.
Yes. And dear heart, I highly recommend you to click the link down below so you can do a consultation. His price is very reasonable, so check him out. I mean, it's really reasonable, so you're not gonna find it out there nowhere with that price. But and thank you for sharing and answering that question. Um, so you kind of answered this question. Answered a lot of them, but anyway, so what are some of the things a person can keep? You already answered this, to keep their brain function um, on a vegan or plant-based diet. So just getting in those omega, and then the sleep. You answered the question, so I don't know. Um, you talked about detox. And maybe this person with that they have to contact you, but like what are some of the ways or things that you've seen that detoxing the body has helped a person, and would it help a person that maybe having difficulties with memory or brain issues?
Okay, yeah. So basically, I did a stream a while back. I think it might have been 2 weeks ago, maybe, and it was about building versus detoxing. Right, as far as the dietary strategy, what's the difference? So that your body, one of the core things that your body does is detoxification, right?
Mhm.
This is why, I mean, exhaling, detoxification, filtering through your lymphatic system is a form of detoxification. Urination is a form of detoxification. Moving your bowels, right? Getting on the porcelain throne and making a smooth move, right? That's detoxification. Sweating is detoxification. You've got a liver, kidneys, lungs, even your blood, right? I mean, your blood, your blood will literally ship nutrients to your cells and then remove waste products from your cells. So
Mhm.
even your blood has a detoxification mechanism, right? That detoxifies your cells. When we talk about detoxification, essentially what we're doing is we're thinking about using exogenous substances, meaning, consuming some type of thing that we can use to improve or enhance the detoxification process that the body is always engaging in,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
Your diet should always be doing that. Now,
Mhm.
as far as your diet is concerned, you and your food choices, you have a spectrum: building and detoxification, right? Now,
Mhm.
typically the foods that are the most water rich and the least calorically dense tend
Mhm.
to be the foods that are the most that are the biggest detoxers, right?
Mhm.
So your biggest detoxifying foods are going to be fruits and vegetables, fruits and leafy greens, period, right?
Mhm.
Um, as well as your herbs and spices. So you got herbs, spices, leafy greens, and fruits, right? So your herbal teas, your leafy greens, and your fruits.
Mhm.
If you wanted to go just have a 100% detoxifying diet, that would be what your diet would be made up of: herb and spice teas, leafy greens, fruits. Then you have building. The building foods are going to be the foods that give you a lot of energy, right?
Mhm.
These are going to be foods with like perhaps more starches. These are going to be foods with just much more carbohydrates. They're just more dense foods. They take longer to digest. So this may be things like, your whole grains, your legumes, your potatoes, things like butternut squash, for example. These would be even your nuts and your seeds. These are going to be things that are higher in carbohydrates, they're higher in proteins, they're higher in dietary fats. And this is more of the building aspect where these things are literally drive the process of building new cells,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
On an accelerated level. So the more of those kinds of foods you eat, the less emphasis there is on detoxification,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So you kind of have to, so there's a time and a place. It depends on what your goals are. Now, the reason why you would detoxify yourself is because um, you are in an acute situation. Maybe you have a fever or flu, or you have some really big flare up with some kind of chronic illness.
Mhm.
Your biggest caloric source should then be your fruits. You don't need to worry about consuming a certain amount of protein or fats or anything like that. You really don't need much fat in your diet at all, actually, if you're trying to detoxify your body,
Mhm.
because fats are inherently going to be more acidic, right? So
Mhm.
fats necessarily raise your acid formation.
Wow.
So you would want to have lower levels of fat in your diet if you're trying to detox, right? This is why the fruitarian thing and the raw diet works so well for reversing chronic illnesses. This is the reason why juicing works so well. Juicing juicing has all of the elements of detoxification, literally the combination of leafy greens, fruits, and herbs and things like that, right? That's all it pretty much is when you're juicing. I
Mhm.
think the only thing that the juicing is missing is the fiber, which fiber also helps the detoxification process. Some people do the juicing and it doesn't really work for them because they're missing the fiber.
Mhm.
So the fiber acts as a binding agent to clean out toxins and metabolites from your digestive tract. So if you have substances in your gut that you need to remove from your gut, you're not really going to be able to do it with juicing. You need the fiber because fiber, it expands and it binds to things, microplastics, heavy metals, whatever the case may be, right? These
Mhm.
toxic substances, excess levels of estrogen, whatever the case is, and they expand as they move through your digestive tract and they bind to these things.
Mhm.
And they pull them out of your digestive tract.
Mhm.
Then you have soluble fiber that coats your digestive tract and your stomach lining. So it
Mhm.
acts as like a shield to protect against acid. So if you have a lot of acid formation in your body, one thing you may want to do is have a buffer in place against that acid so that you're not, especially this is really important if you got Crohn's, colitis, diverticulitis, right? Any kind of ulcers or gut damage, then that soluble fiber becomes really important because it acts as a buffer
Mhm.
to coat your digestive tract, right?
Mhm.
And improve the digestive system as well, right? You could
Mhm.
have toxins sitting in your lower gut in your colon, and you need to empty your colon. So if your goal is to empty your colon, or at least that's something that you really need to do in order to recover, then it would make sense to have that fiber in your diet,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
So juicing is very effective for detoxification, but it's not a magic bullet. You may want to have your juicing in addition to more fiber rich things,
Mhm.
right? So that you making sure that you're getting the whole range, the whole spectrum of detoxification.
Mhm. Yes. Wow. Thanks for sharing that. Um, so with the to help with the when people have ulcers and gut issues with acid, Like, what would you recommend them to consume to help coat their stomach lining?
So it could be things like bananas, avocado, rolled oats, berries, right? These are probably some of the things that I would really stick to.
Okay. All right. So I'm at my last question. This is short. But anyway, what is the greatest tip that you can share with someone being vegan, plant-based? Like what, and you can make it as short, long as you possibly can. I prefer long, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think the number one tip is have a plan.
Mhm.
Know what your objectives are and have a plan. Um, being vegan is an ethical position, not a diet,
Mhm.
right? You want to cut out animal products and go vegan because you are against animal cruelty and animal exploitation,
Mhm.
right? On principle. It's more of an ethical framework.
Mhm.
If you're going to be plant based for health reasons, that implies that you have health goals. Do you have a chronic illness that you're trying to reverse? Are you trying to lose weight? Are you trying to build muscle? Are you trying to gain weight? If you're trying to gain weight, it's because you're trying to build muscle.
Mhm.
Um, the only real ways to gain weight in a healthy way is through building muscle mass and rehydrating your body. Those are the primary ways you're going to do it. Um, trying to gain weight by increasing body fat is not necessarily a healthy objective. If you're trying to lose weight, you have to identify why you're overweight in the first place.
Mhm.
Most people are not overweight because they eat too much. It's because you're eating too much of specific things, and the things you're eating are toxic, and it's a result of way more acid formation than alkalining that's going on, or alkalization that's going on.
Mhm.
So you're producing a hitch in your metabolic process, and that's what's causing you to have more fat storage, right? One of
Mhm.
the ways that your body deals with acid formation accumulation is by storing it inside your fat cells, right? So
Mhm.
any of the acids that can't be flushed out of your body will be stored inside your fat cells, right?
Mhm.
Um, body fat is a protective mechanism. So your body literally will store and expand fat cells or create new fat cells as a protection mechanism. If that fat is not there, then your vital organs will be subject to attack and damage, right?
Mhm.
So basically, body fat is a buffer to protect your vital organs, right? In particular, visceral fat. And then you have your subcutaneous fat. Your visceral fat is the easiest fat to burn, um, and so that's usually the first one to go. So as you decrease the acid formation in your body, as you get more hydrated, your visceral fat will decrease. That'd be the first thing to decrease. This is the reason why, at least in my experience, when I put people on a diet plan, they experience the most weight loss around the midsection.
Mhm.
So this goes for like as far as women are concerned. I put women on a plan. What we do is we measure their waist and hips.
Mhm.
And what we want to do is we want to create an 8 to 10 inch difference in between the waist and hips. So meaning if your hips are a 38, your waist should be a 28 or at least a 30, right?
Mhm.
Um, if you have a 42-inch hip measurement and then your waist measurement is like 38, you're storing a lot of visceral fat and you have a distressed gut, and that's why you're accumulating all of that fat around your midsection. So that's stress weight. It's a lot of
Mhm.
stress. If you're storing all the body fat around your arms and your legs, and your neck and your face and whatnot, that's an estrogen imbalance.
Mhm.
Where you've got like some type of hormonal issue where the estrogen is really high,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And normally, high estrogen is not really a bad thing, but when your estrogen is really high, that's an indication that your body is combating a lot of stress, and estrogen is an anti-stress hormone. And so if the estrogen is increasing, that is because there is a need, there's a demand for that estrogen, and that's why it's creating it. If that problem persists for long enough, your progesterone levels will be driven down perpetually to the point where you could be pushed into early menopause. Right. Or you can develop things like endometriosis or fibroids, things like that, and then you'll see a transformation of your fat stores, where then the fat storage will switch from being predominantly in your hips, legs, and arms, and in your face, to then being around the midsection. You'll see a transformation as you get older. Right. If you got skinny legs and skinny arms and you store all your fat around your torso, that's straight up gut health issues and poor sleep quality. That is sleep deprivation, and in a distressed gut, right? And you'll typically see men store their body fat like this, right? So that's all stress. So you can look at your body type and tell what your problem is. So in all actuality, if your diet is spot on, but you're still not really seeing a significant difference in your weight loss, it could be because you're going through sleep deprivation. And if your diet is spot on, it should improve your sleep quality. If your diet is not improving your sleep quality, it's probably because you're going to bed too late. You're off your sleep cycle. Right. So there's these different things where your diet would have to be tailored to what your actual goal is. I think that your best shot would be to have a diet that is primarily geared towards stress reduction. And a diet that is geared towards stress reduction typically is going to be foods that are lower on the glycemic index, where these foods are anywhere from like carbohydrate rich, water rich foods that typically have around a 30 to a 70 on the glycemic index. The foods that are higher on the glycemic index would have a lower glycemic load, like watermelon, for example, and it would have like a glycemic index score of 80, but then the glycemic load is really low, which means you can eat large portions of it and not really see any kind of significant blood sugar spike. So there's a lot of detail, but basically the reason why I'm explaining all these different nuances is because you need to self-assess. And so what happens is people have the right solution to the wrong problem. So when people say, "Oh, I've been eating really clean," and it's like, well, it's not a question of eating clean, right? You know, it's kind of like, look, you can use Windex to clean your windows, or you can use bleach to clean your windows.
Right.
Bleach is a good cleaner, but you don't necessarily need to use it on your windows, right?
Right.
You may be good at, you may be better off with the Windex, right? For example. You know, if you are, let's say, 60 years old and you're eating 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of your body weight, and you're trying to lose weight, well, is high protein actually what you want? Because the thing is that if you're eating all this excess protein, well, we know nutrition is zero sum. So the more of one thing you eat, the less of another you're getting. So what are you cutting out in order to achieve that high amount of protein? And are you cutting out something that you need more of, and you actually need less of the protein? So that's the thing you need to consider as well. So it's not necessarily a thing about eating clean in general. That's a very loose term, right? When we talk about the cleanliness of foods, this isn't a meaningful term. I mean, if you clean a fish thoroughly enough, yeah, fish can be a clean food, right? But it may not necessarily be something that's going to benefit you in any meaningful way. Especially being the fact that it is a acid forming food.
Yes.
Right. So you have to assess your problem and then have a plan that is geared towards your problem. So having a plan, you know, not and count, and actually, in addition to having a plan, and this ties directly to having a plan, but count everything. People say, "Oh, well, you know, kind of plan, it just seems convoluted. It seems complicated," or I don't really like to count my food or count calories or count macros or anything like that. And it's like, well, you don't act like that when it comes to your finances. Right?
Right. Right.
If somebody asks you, hey, what are your total monthly bills? You'd be able to tell them, or at least you should,
Mm-hmm.
right? Hey, what's your monthly bill budget? How much money do you make a year? If you can't answer these questions, you're not really operating as an adult, right?
Right.
Same thing applies to your health.
Yes.
And it is extremely easy to track your diet. Go on chronometer.com, right?
Mm-hmm.
CRONO meter.com and
Mm-hmm.
log your foods. See, and it'll tell you the carbohydrate breakdown, the fatty acid breakdown, the amino acid profile, the vitamins and the minerals, the water content, the fiber content of all the foods you log in.
Mm-hmm.
See what your diet looks like.
Yes.
See what the amount of everything is. Right? Go meal by meal and see what your totals are like for the day.
Mm-hmm.
People who have problems, and I do these calls with people, and I'm saying, and I ask, what does the caloric value of a full day of eating on average look like for you? Most people can't answer that question.
Mm-hmm.
On average, how many grams of carbs are you consuming per day, roughly? Most people couldn't tell me. Right? What is the average caloric value of each meal that you eat on average, roughly? Can't tell me. Not even specifically, just roughly. People don't know.
You're
And if
right.
you don't know and you're not taking inventory, then how are you going to fix your problem?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
If you want to be able to, let's say, fix a leak in your sink,
Mm-hmm.
well, how do you know what wrench to use? Right?
Right.
Using a drill, how do you know which drill bit to use? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there has to be some kind of calculations. At some point in time, you're going to have to get the sizing right.
Yes.
There has to be some inventory taken. You have to be able to identify where the leak is coming from, what's causing the leak,
Mm-hmm.
what to tighten, what to loosen up, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't be lazy about it. You have to do the work to fix the problem, otherwise the problem doesn't get fixed.
Right. That's true.
Right. So even if you don't feel like it, well, there's a lot of things that we as adults don't feel like doing. But if we have a problem that we need to fix, well, we can't just not fix the problem because we don't feel like doing the work
Right.
or exercising the discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We don't have the luxury of operating as children. Right. Where I say, you'll have children. And if we were to live as a child for a day as a human being, it would be a very uncomfortable experience, right? Can you imagine like being an adult and you wake up in the morning and you run out your house, no keys, no wallet, no form of identification, your license ain't on you, nothing. You just run out the house.
Right.
You go to the park and you play around, you fall down, you scrape your knee, you swing on the swings, whatever. No
Mm-hmm.
phone, no schedule, no nothing. You don't know what time it is, no nothing, right?
Right.
You wake up in the morning, you watch cartoons. Do we even have a thing called Saturday morning cartoons anymore? I don't think. I don't even think it's. Man, you wake up, you eat cartoon, you watch cartoons, you go and you eat your favorite cereal before you even brush your teeth, right?
Right. Right.
Imagine just do it. You just run around, no plan, because little children don't have plans and schedules, and you just whatever you feel like doing, you just live from one impulse to the next,
Right.
right? You're
Right.
entertained, you're bored, entertained, bored, entertained, bored, tired, sleep. Right? That is the pattern of a child's life. As an adult, you can't do that.
Right.
And as an adult, we do this when it comes to like our health and things like that. We just,
Mm.
oh, I'm hungry, and you'll just eat whatever you smell first, right? Like just opportunistic eating. Like you walk past a donut shop, next thing you know, you're eating donuts.
Right.
You're like, oh, how'd this happen?
Okay. Right.
Right? It's just like a blur. Like you just swiping your card at a drive-through somewhere, right? It's, oh, well, I just drove by. It's a place that has food. I just eat it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's this kind of thing. And so we're not really aware of what's in the food, how much oil they're using in the food, how much they're cooking it, who's handling it. You don't know. If you go to a drive-through, you have no idea who's touching your food.
Right.
These people can be licking the buns and all kinds of stuff. You don't know,
Or dropping.
right? They
Right.
could be used the bathroom and whatnot, and they're trying to be cheap with the toilet paper, right? So they got some nastiness going on in there. They get out in the kitchen, they touch your food or whatever like that. You got all kind of little bacteria of somebody else's. I'm not gonna get too graphic, but basically, You live in
It's
hand to
real.
mouth. You just have an arm reach out the drive-through window and hand you a bag of food that's a bit more greasy than we would like, but it's like, hey, whatever. Lunch break. This is what I can get. This is what it is. Right? That's a dangerous
Right.
way to live. That's insane. That's
Yeah.
crazy to me. I'll
Yes.
never look at a drive-through the same again.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
And you just, and when you do that for years,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have no meal prep. You
Mm-hmm.
just run out somewhere and just go get some on your lunch break. That's crazy.
Right.
Right? I mean, just no plan. It's just like, well, I'm hungry. Let me just get something.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, I woke up late again. I got to get to work on time. So I'm going to get a coffee and a croissant. Croissants are just made out of just like butter.
Mm-hmm.
It's just bread made out of butter and then coffee with the cream in it.
Yeah.
So you just fat, sugar, and caffeine every day.
Yep.
That's insane. It's just neurotoxins first thing in the morning every day. It's like, all right, time to poison my brain, hawked up on caffeine, and go to
Yeah.
work. And then after that, it's like Chick-fil-A or Panera Bread or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
No, and that's the plan. The plan is neurotoxins, greasy fatty acids, and sugar first thing in the morning, stress at work, and then garbage foods that are on the drive-through for years.
Yeah.
And then, the belly button gets a little bit too deep when we look in the mirror and we go, oh man, we got to do something about this, right? You ever do the thing, things are going sideways. And you
Yes.
take the tip of your finger
Uh-huh.
and you put your finger in your belly button and you feel the moisture in your belly button and you look around to see if anybody sees you and then you smell your belly button, right? You smell like, because it's the moisture buildup in the belly button, right? And you go, what's that smell like? It's
Man.
these kinds of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a weight loss journey and I did it. None wouldn't necessarily, I dropped like 45 pounds, from my highest weight.
Mm-hmm.
But these kinds of things, you experience the changes and you get a little curious about these changes. Right. And then you're like, I don't know if that should be like that. Maybe I want to do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's a
Right.
start, but it's more than just, oh, I'm just going to eat clean. It's,
Right.
it's a little bit more than that.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so these are lessons that I've learned in my personal life because trying to be successful at doing things without a plan, that ain't it.
Right.
It doesn't work.
Right. Exactly.
And then one plan that you deploy, it can work for a month,
Mm-hmm.
2 months. Maybe it only works for like a few weeks. Right. You can have a plan, it'll work for a whole year, but then it
Mm-hmm.
stops working.
Right.
What do you do now? So you have to be agile enough to be able to reassess where you are while the plan is no longer working. Because
Mm-hmm.
one plan that's not going to work forever.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You're on a weight loss journey. You got to lose 100 pounds or something like that. It'll take you anywhere from 6 months to a year to drop 100 pounds for most people.
Mm-hmm.
But you will have to change your approach periodically, right? At least on a quarterly basis or so. Every 12 weeks, you got to make an adjustment. Because if you use one plan to drop 60 pounds, that same plan that you use to drop 60 pounds is not going to get the other 40 pounds off.
Yeah.
You're in an entirely different place. You done made the calculations for when you were 60 pounds heavier. You drop 60 pounds, you're in a totally different world. Your body is significantly different than it was.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And anybody who's ever been over 300 pounds and you drop below 250, there's a very significant difference in how your body is.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I've had people where they've dropped 60, 80, 100 pounds. It's an entirely different world.
Mm-hmm.
You breathe different. You move different. You bump into things less. It's easier to put your shoes on. It's easier to put your socks on.
Right.
You sleep different. You no longer have the sleep apnea you used to have. You no longer have the same food cravings. It's just fundamentally different. Your clothes fit different. It's just different. People treat you different. Your face looks different.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes.
You never notice the width of your neck until you drop a certain amount of weight. And then you're like, oh, my neck looked longer. I don't know.
Have a
I see
neck.
cheekbones, right? These
Yeah.
things change. It's a fundamentally different thing.
Right.
Right. So you have to be agile enough and be able to know how to take inventory, reassess yourself, and be able to identify where you're at and what plan you need to construct in order to move forward.
Mm-hmm. I know for me, Lately, I lost a lot of weight. Well, to me, it's a lot, over 20 pounds. And I've been feeling so light. It's been nervous for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I felt like I needed to put it back on. So I'm like, no, you okay? I mean, it's crazy. I'm like, oh, I feel so. I felt fragile, and I'm like, no, I had to talk to myself. Like, you're good. You're just on this journey because it is. You do feel different. You're
I went
not
through that.
the same person.
I went through that.
Yeah.
When so I'm 5'9".
Hmm.
My top weight was 193 pounds.
Hmm.
Maybe a little heavier than that, but I remember it's like around 193. When I got down to like 160, I was like, I'm kind of getting a little too light. I don't know. I haven't been at this weight. I don't remember ever.
Hmm.
Then I dropped down to 155, and I was like, I don't know, I think I'm good here. This is a little. I feel like I'm getting skinny now, but I feel great.
Hmm.
When I dropped to 150, I was like, that's it. I can't drop another pound.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
For me, my sticking point is 150. I can't
Hmm.
drop below 150 because then I'm like, oh, that's too much. I did alternate day fasting, and usually I do it for like 12 weeks or so. But this time, um, I did it and I stopped. I stopped doing the alternate day fasting because I dropped down to 148 pounds.
Wow.
And I was like, it's a bit too much. Started eating again, and after a full week of eating, popped back up to 157.
Yeah.
My body fat stayed the same, but I popped back up to 157.
Hmm.
And the reason why I hit 148 was because I was fasting. So I didn't have the stored glycogen in my cells enough.
Hmm.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, you deplete your glycogen, you're going to lose weight, right? Because a lot of your weight is going to be water and glucose storage inside your cells.
Hmm.
But I got freaked out by the scale numbers. I know when people are like, oh, that seems a little too low. I don't want to lose all that weight now. Like, I've had women who are like, they're like 5'4". And I'm like, yeah, I think a good weight at 5'4" would be around, 140 pounds. Now
Hmm.
they would be like 230 pounds and be like, whoa, 140. I would be skin and bones. That's too much.
Hmm.
Now, logically, rationally, that's like, oh, come on now. Like, you know, be skin and bones, be a normal, healthy, weighted person at 5'4". How heavy you want to be at 5'4"? You can actually be 130 at 5'4".
Hmm.
But when you're so used to being at a certain size, it is unbelievable. It even sounds ridiculous to know what a normal healthy weight would be.
Yeah.
Sounds ridiculous. It's like telling people, hey, you should do 36-hour fasts 2 to 3 times a week. Not eat for 36 hours? You'll starve to death. It's ridiculous to think you would starve to death in 36
Yeah.
hours. Especially if your body fat is like in the 30s. Like you're like 36% body fat. If you starve to death at 36% body fat in 36 hours, that mathematically is extraordinarily implausible.
Yeah.
Technically, if you're above 30% body fat, you don't need to eat for a whole month, right? Like
Right.
you can just go like a full 30-day fast
Hmm.
because you have enough stored body fat to do it. I don't
Yeah.
really advise people to do that. Um, so, but knowing that 36 hours doesn't really sound extreme,
Yeah.
right? It's not 30 days, it's 36 hours. It's literally like a day and a half. You'll be fine.
Right. Right.
What
So.
about the muscle mass loss? So like, first of all, you don't lose muscle until like at least a month of like no eating.
Hmm. Wow. So, like me, I'm 5'9" as well. So, like,
Mhm.
what is a good average weight for a woman? 5'9". And we do have another question. I don't know if you have time for it.
Yeah, that's fine. We could do another one. It depends on what your body composition is. It depends. So for example, a woman could be 5'9", and be at a healthy weight of 150 pounds. A woman could be 5'9" and be fine at 140, 145, right?
Mhm.
Because your body fat is going to be higher as a woman, right?
Ways.
But it depends. I mean, are you prone to having wider hips, you know, bigger bust? So, I mean, depending on these measurements, you may be a bit heavier as a result.
Mhm.
If you're naturally like flat chested and narrow in the hips or whatever, well, that's a different story. So it depends on your body makeup, your body composition, right? Hip, shoulder width, hip width, that kind of thing. It matters. For me, I'm not naturally a big person, right? I don't have like really broad or wide shoulders or thick wrists and ankles or anything like that. I don't have that.
Mhm.
I have the musculature and the stature that I have because of a lot of work that I put into training. That's why I look like that. But I'm naturally a fairly skinny person.
Okay.
If I didn't train in the gym and build muscle and all that kind of stuff, a natural weight for me would be like 136, 140 pounds.
Wow.
I'll say like around 135, 136 pounds.
You look bigger than the weight that you look like just muscles and I think it was alive. You say you was like 150 something and people's like, really? I mean, you really look like really big.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah.
the training. It's the way that I train. So it
Mhm.
causes like a certain, you can transform your body. Yeah.
Yes. That's what I'm working on. Okay, we have a question here. She have a two-part. Well, said it's her last question. I don't know if she's still here. Can you see the question? I can read it.
Last question. How can I reduce stomach acid causing nasty taste all day? You mean acid reflux? Like you're having like stomach acid go up into your lower esophagus and you kind of like taste it. Is that what you're talking about? I had my gallbladder removed and pain went away. But I said, oh, you had your gallbladder removed. So you're dealing with acid reflux and that kind of thing. All right. Yeah. So you would do very well with your dietary fats in between 10 to 15%, with your dietary fats being predominantly from polyunsaturated fat sources. It's very important that you stay hydrated during your diet. With your diet. So, and more alkalizing foods, it's very important that you have a good amount of magnesium, manganese, and potassium in your diet in particular. Um, so, it would be a good idea for you to have more foods like cantaloupes, mangoes, watermelon, grapes, apples, pineapple, strawberries, grapefruit, tangerines, sweet potato, lentils, chickpeas. You don't really need a whole lot of protein in your diet, but like a cup to a cup and a half of legumes in your diet would definitely be very beneficial to have. Your leafy greens, whether it be your broccoli, cabbage, watercress, spinach, kale, things like that. Um, but having a high fruit diet, I think, would be really beneficial for you. Bananas, avocado, buckwheat or kasha, which is toasted buckwheat groats, kamut, um, oats, particularly rolled oats, um, yeah, foods like that, and then of course having herbs and spices in your diet, whether it be nutmeg, cinnamon, oregano, basil, parsley, turmeric, ginger tea would be good also. So things like that. Yeah. But definitely having more of a carbohydrate dominant diet, where your protein is around 10 to 12% of your macros, dietary fats are in between like 10, 15% at the most.
Wow. Thanks for sharing that. And he gave you your answer. But if you need more information, please click the link below and contact Nutritionist coach, teacher, plant-based uh, weightlifting, all fruits, high
All the
raw.
stuff.
He's good. He's good. And I appreciate you and the queen. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you guys. Thank you guys for doing the work, sharing and helping people, which we need in this world today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you guys for watching. Check him out on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook. He's all over out helping the people. And you do your lives on Monday still at 8
Yes.
Eastern Standard.
Monday on my YouTube channel.
Yes. So y'all go check them out. Uh you will be excited and happy and learn, and he answers your questions. He's really good. So I appreciate that. Thank you again. Love yourself first because you are worth it. Peace. Have a
There you go.
wonderful weekend.